Good morning and welcome to Backyard and Beyond. And good morning to you, Dr. Maisel.
Good morning, Yvonne. How are you?
I'm great. And you're out there in San Francisco this morning?
About 30 miles east of San Francisco,
Yeah.
yes.
Is it sunny or not yet?
Haven't looked out yet.
Yeah. Well, it's a little early yet for you. A couple hours yet there to go. Anyhow, what we want to talk about, of course, is your book, Brainstorm, Harnessing the Power of Productive Obsessions. And a couple of definitions I'd like to have you give me. But I first want to mention, you've, in the past, many of your books, much of your work has been done with performing artists such as musicians and with writers and so on. But it seems to me this book applies to everybody.
I think so. It arises from my work with creative performing artists, but it is for anybody who wants to kind of bite into a subject more fully than maybe they've bitten into something before. It's about thinking larger and using your brain differently. So it is for everyone.
Okay. Define productive obsession, please.
Well, we need to start with the word obsession, which got defined as a negative thing a long time ago, more than a century ago, in the clinical world. All obsessions got defined as intrusive, unwanted thoughts. So we've been kind of stuck with the word being a negative word, and that's why we associate it with things like obsessive-compulsive disorder and what have you.
And I also think of addiction when I think of obsession.
Exactly. But, our artists, our scientists, our thinking people have known for thousands of years that there are good obsessions, that there are productive obsessions, that it can be great to really pay attention to one idea for a long time and even feel pressured by that idea, really want to be thinking about it. So a productive obsession is simply an idea that you pay a lot of attention to, maybe to the exclusion of lots of smaller ideas. It's a way of focusing your mind on something that you're passionate about that really interests you.
Okay. And those could be everyday kinds of things as well as the artistry and the maybe inventing something and whatever. I'm thinking, for some people, losing weight is an obsession. Would you say that?
That's right. And the difference between that being a productive obsession and an unproductive obsession is unproductive obsessions are rooted in anxiety. If you're simply worrying about the weight all the time, that's not a productive obsession. That's just you worrying. But if you're actively working a program, if you're obsessed with your program, if you're actually disciplined and devoted to losing the weight, that's a productive obsession.
Okay.
That connects to your meaning-making needs, the way you want to live your life. So that's the difference between the two.
Okay. Now, what about the main title of your book is Brainstorm. How do you define brainstorm?
It's that experience we have when we're really thinking hard about something. And what it really means is that our neurons have loosened their grip around all of the small thoughts that we have all day long. And everyone is consumed by small thoughts all day long because that's what life is really about. Remembering to pick up the kids at 3 and drive on the right side of the road and one thing and another. When we loosen the grip of neurons from those small thoughts, then suddenly we have our whole brain back, all of those billions of neurons. And we experience that as a kind of brainstorm. We experience that as a richness that we don't usually experience. And we argue in the book that you can only do that for maybe an hour or two a day because we have to have all those other small thoughts.
Yes.
We do need to remember to pick up the kids at 3 and all of that stuff. So by instituting some kind of morning practice, we think morning's a great time for this, maybe 1 hour, to really be obsessed about something that interests you. I think that's a good way to live a life and start to add something to your life that feels meaningful.
And, somewhere back in my history, and I guess many times heard, we don't begin to use nearly all of the power of our brain. Our brains are wonderful things, and we just use a small portion.
Yeah, and we've been trained to do that. It's exactly what school does. It trains us to use just a portion of our brain to remember dates and facts and draw inside the lines. And then parents naturally have to collude with teachers because parents want their kids to get good grades. So most kids grow up in an environment where they're supposed to do the right thing, and each right thing is a pretty small thing. So it takes a while to break free of that doing one small thing after another and really getting your whole brain back. By the way, when we sleep and dream, that's when we have our whole brain because we're not thinking about picking up the kids at 3 and what have you. And that's why dreams can feel like perfectly edited films because our whole brain is working on them our brain does a beautiful job of turning out a whole movie every night. As soon as we wake up, we don't have that brain available anymore. We're thinking about small things again. So I think if people have interesting dreams, that's kind of proof that they have this brain power available to them. They just need to use it during the day.
I find that kind of scary, but maybe not.
Which part is scary?
Well, if I have a bad dream, that's kind of scary. But and so one of the things you were talking about, especially kids learning, in your book, you talk a little bit about critical thinking.
Mm-hmm.
Can you just tell us a little more about that as in
just
relation
that
to learning?
All educators, pay lip service to the idea that kids ought to be learning critical thinking, but when observers go into the classrooms, they just don't see any critical thinking going on. They see memorization and recitation and regurgitation of facts. So we think it would be nice if schools could change in the following small regard. We understand that big changes are pretty much impossible. They have to do with funding and political issues and all kinds of things. But if the school day could include 1 hour of genuine critical thinking, not be subject matter based, not be about arithmetic or French or math, but about thinking, then kids could have that experience and have at least one portion of the day where they get to think about large subjects in any way they like.
And what if? Is that part of critical thinking? What if?
That's right. Give them scenarios. What if your friend Joey did something? Under what circumstances would or wouldn't you turn him into the principal? Kids love to think about right and wrong and the big issues, but they just don't get that opportunity.
Okay, a couple of other topics that I found interesting, and you, by the way, you say you can read this book in an afternoon and learn much from it. But in there, you talk about things beyond your control and also taking personal responsibility, and I think those are related. There's many people who don't want to take personal responsibility. It's my upbringing, I don't have enough money, it's whatever. So how do we learn to take personal responsibility?
Well, first of all, as you say, you need to want to do it. Nobody can twist your arm into taking personal responsibility. But let's say you do want to do it, but you still feel a little stuck. Then the first step is to notice your own self-talk, because we're quite tricky creatures. And we're continually saying things like, I'm too busy, I'm too tired. And we just buy into those things because they have the ring of truth, because we are busy and we do get tired. So the first step is just to notice the kinds of things we say to ourselves and the way we let ourselves off the hook by saying things like, I'm too tired and I'm too busy. And then we want to start disputing those and saying, yeah, I'm tired, but I'm not too tired to spend half an hour in my home business. And then we want to start, substituting more affirmative self-talk, talking ourselves into a place of really wanting to do the work we claim to want to do. So to make that long story short, I think the solution is cognitive, namely, if you do want to take more personal responsibility, you want to look at your own self-talk and see how that is or isn't helping you take personal responsibility.
Okay. And then how do we handle those things that really are beyond our control? Because there are many things, like the weather, that are beyond our control. So how do we handle that in terms of the productive obsessions?
Well, you want to let go of outcomes. People don't understand very well that genuine process has its ups and downs. We have to have real permission to make mistakes and messes and to factor in those things that aren't in our control. It isn't so much that we want to get the thing in front of us perfected. It's rather that we want to show up. It's that we want to work on something and think about something. Einstein couldn't really get his unified field theory because he had no idea about string theory. He didn't know what was coming. So he couldn't yet do the things that he wanted to do. It was out of his control. He didn't have that knowledge yet. And that's going to be true of lots of us. We're just not going to have the knowledge or the technology or the wherewithal to do something. We still want to show up. I think that's what makes us proud, is when we show up and try to do something. Even if we don't fulfill it perfectly, still we feel good that we tried.
Okay. It seems to me one of the basic things that you've said here throughout is you need to take time to work on those things that you want to have happen and kind of do that brainstorm thing.
Yeah, and I run a cyberspace group for people who are trying to create and nurture these productive obsessions, and I ask them to give their obsession a full month. If you just give it 20 minutes or an hour, what's going to happen is it's going to feel hard, and you're going to say, boy, I don't think I'm really interested in this, and you're going to discard it. So you want to give things enough time to know if a mere interest can turn into a really large interest, maybe even into a passion. I suggest 30 days. I think that's a fair amount of time to give a new obsession.
Okay. Well, we need to tell people how to get your book, Brainstorm: Harnessing the Power of Productive Obsessions. Where can we find this, Eric?
Sure. There's a website for the book, and that's called brainstormthebook.com. And if people want to learn more about what I do, you can go to my site, which is ericmaisel.com, and that's EricMaisel.com.
Okay, well, thank you very much for your time today. And you mentioned Albert Einstein earlier, and he said, I know quite certainly that I myself have no special talent. Curiosity, obsession, and dogged endurance combined with self-criticism have brought me to my ideas.
Thank you.